I bought my grandparents' lake house last summer, and it should have been one of the happiest moments of my life. I remember the day I got the keys, standing on that familiar wooden porch, running my hand along the railing my grandfather had built with his own hands 40 years ago. The paint was chipped, the wood weathered by decades of lake wind and summer storms, but it was perfect. It was home. It had always been home. This wasn't just any property to me. This was the place where my entire childhood lived and breathed. From the time I was 6 years old until I graduated high school, my parents would drop me off here every June, and I wouldn't leave until August. My grandparents treated the house like a summer camp for me and my friends, a place where kids could be kids without the pressure of the outside world. We'd wake up to the smell of coffee brewing and bacon frying. We'd spend entire days on the lake, coming inside only when we were so hungry we couldn't stand it anymore. My grandmother would have sandwiches ready, and we'd eat them on the dock, our feet dangling in the water, talking about nothing and everything. The dock itself was legendary in our group. It stretched 30 feet out into the lake, and at the end, there was a diving platform my grandfather had installed when my dad was young. That's where I learned to swim, where Ryan learned to dive, where all of us conquered our fears summer after summer. I can still remember being 7 years old, terrified of the deep water, and my grandfather sitting on the edge of the dock with his feet in the water, telling me that courage wasn't about not being scared. It was about being scared and doing it anyway. I jumped that day, and he was right there to pull me up, laughing and proud. The kitchen was the heart of the house. My grandmother made pancakes every single Sunday morning without fail. Not just regular pancakes, but these incredible blueberry pancakes with fresh berries she'd pick from the bushes that grew wild along the property line. She'd make enough to feed an army, and somehow we'd eat every single one. The kitchen had this old linoleum floor that was probably installed in the 70s, yellow and orange flowers that should have been hideous, but somehow felt exactly right. There was a window over the sink that looked out onto the lake, and my grandmother would stand there doing dishes, watching us play, making sure we were safe. Then there was the screen porch, my favorite place in the entire world. It wrapped around the back of the house, and on summer nights, we'd drag our sleeping bags out there and sleep under the stars. Well, we try to sleep. Mostly we'd stay up until 2 or 3 in the morning, telling ghost stories, talking about our dreams, making plans for lives we hadn't lived yet. Ryan and I made a pact out there when we were 12 that we'd be best friends forever, that nothing would ever come between us. We were so sure of everything back then. When my grandparents decided to sell 2 years ago, my heart broke. They were getting older, and the maintenance was too much. My grandfather's knees couldn't handle the stairs anymore, and my grandmother worried about being so far from their doctors. They were moving to a retirement community closer to the city, and they needed to let the house go. I understood, but understanding didn't make it hurt any less. This house held every good memory of my childhood. The thought of strangers living there, changing it, maybe even tearing it down to build something modern and soulless, was unbearable. That's when I decided I had to buy it, no matter what it took. I was 28 years old, working as a project manager at a tech company, and I've been saving money for a few years. Not for a house, exactly, but for a future that felt increasingly real. I've been with my girlfriend Maya for 4 years at that point, and we've started talking seriously about marriage, about buying a place together, about all the things couples talk about when they're planning a life. Maya had seemed excited about the lake house when I first mentioned it. She'd been there a few times over the years, though she'd never spent a full summer there like I had. She wasn't really an outdoorsy person, preferred the city, but she said she could see the appeal. She talked about how we could renovate it, make it more modern, maybe rent it out on Airbnb when we weren't using it. I wasn't thrilled about the rental idea, but I was willing to compromise. That's what you do when you love someone, right? You find a middle ground. We started the mortgage application process together. It made sense financially, 2 incomes instead of 1, and it felt like a commitment, a step toward the future we've been planning. I was nervous, but excited. This was really happening. I was going to own the house that meant everything to me, and I was going to share it with the person I loved. Then the loan officer called me. There was a problem with Maya's credit report, a significant problem. I remember sitting in my car in the parking lot of my office building, listening to this stranger tell me that Maya had over $70,000 in debt. Credit cards, personal loans, even a car loan I'd never known about. Her credit score was in the low 500s. The mortgage application was going to be denied unless I could qualify on my own, which thankfully I could. But that wasn't the point. Se vendit tous en dollars. For years together, and she'd never mentioned it once. Not when we talked about our finances. Not when we discussed combining our lives. Not ever. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I sat in that car for an hour, just staring at nothing, trying to process what I just learned. When I confronted Maya that evening, she was defensive at first, then angry, then finally broke down crying. She said she'd been embarrassed, that she'd gotten into debt in her early 20s and had been trying to dig herself out ever since. She said she'd been planning to tell me that she just hadn't found the right time. For years, and she hadn't found the right time. She begged me not to end things over this, promised she'd work on it so we could get through it together. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about trust, about honesty, about the foundation of our entire relationship. What else had she lied about? What else didn't I know? I looked at this person I thought I knew completely, and suddenly she was a stranger. Every conversation we'd ever had about our future felt tainted, built on a lie she'd been maintaining for 4 years. The betrayal cut deeper than I knew betrayal could cut. This wasn't a one-time mistake or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a sustained deception, day after day, month after month, year after year. Every time we'd talked about money, every time we'd made plans, every time I trusted her with my heart and my future, she'd been hiding this massive secret. I told her I needed time to think, but I already knew something fundamental had broken, and I didn't think it could be repaired. We tried counseling for a few weeks, but my heart wasn't in it. I couldn't get past the lies. 2 months after I found out about the debt, 6 months ago now, we ended things. She moved out of my apartment, and I tried to pick up the pieces of my life. The breakup was devastating in ways I hadn't expected. It wasn't just losing Maya. It was losing the future I'd imagined, the life I'd thought we were building together. It was questioning every moment of our relationship, wondering what had been real and what had been performance. I threw myself into work during the day and into restoring the lake house at night and on weekends. The house became my therapy, my way forward. I spent months working on it. The place needed more than I'd initially thought. The roof had some leaks that needed addressing. The plumbing was original to the house and needed updated. The electrical system was a fire hazard waiting to happen, but I didn't mind the work. Every repair felt like an act of love, like I was honoring my grandparents and all the memories they'd helped create. I kept as much of the original character as I could. The yellow and orange kitchen floor stayed. The screen porch got new screens, but kept its old wooden frame. The dock got reinforced, but maintained its weather charm. Ryan was there through all of it. He'd help me on weekends, the two of us working side by side like we had as kids, though now we were fixing a house instead of building forts. He'd been my best friend since we were 6 years old, and he understood what the house meant to me. He made his own memories there. He'd been there for every important moment of my life, and I'd been there for his. We got engaged to Jennifer last fall. I was his best man. It felt right, like everything was coming full circle. Jennifer was great, really. She was smart, funny, and she clearly loved Ryan. They'd been together for 3 years, and they were one of those couples that just made sense. When they got engaged, they started planning a spring wedding, something small and intimate. About 50 people, just close friends and family. One night in December, Ryan and Jennifer came over to the lake house. We sat on the screen porch, even though it was cold, wrapped in blankets and drinking hot chocolate spiked with peppermint schnapps. They were talking about wedding venues, struggling to find something that felt right and fit their budget. That's when Jennifer looked out at the lake, at the gazebo my grandfather had built at the edge of the property, and said it was the most beautiful spot she'd ever seen. The gazebo was special. My grandfather had built it the summer I turned 10, and it had been the site of countless important moments. My grandparents had renewed their vows there on their 40th anniversary. My cousin had gotten engaged there. It overlooked the lake, surrounded by old oak trees, and in the spring, it would be covered in wisteria blooms. It was magical. I didn't even hesitate. Of course they could get married there. That's what the house was for, to bring people together, to celebrate life's important moments. Ryan hugged me, and Jennifer actually cried. They were so happy, so grateful, and I felt good about it. This was exactly what I'd hoped for when I bought the place, that it would continue to be a space where good memories were made. We spent the next few months planning. I helped them think through logistics, where people would park, where they'd set up chairs, what we'd do if it rained. Jennifer's mom made most of the other arrangements, the catering and the flowers and all the details that go into a wedding. The date was set for mid-April, when the weather would be perfect and the wisteria would be in full bloom. Meanwhile, I'd started dating again. Nothing serious, just getting back out there, trying to remember how to connect with people. I've been on a few first dates that went nowhere, one second date that was nice but didn't spark anything. Then, about 2 months ago, I met Caroline. We matched on a dating app, met for coffee, and ended up talking for 3 hours. She was a teacher, loved hiking and reading, and she had this laugh that made everything feel lighter. We'd been on 6 or 7 dates, and while it was still early, there was potential there. Real potential. That's when Maya started showing up. The first time, it was 11 at night on a Tuesday. I was getting ready for bed when I heard pounding on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw her standing there, her face red and tear-streaked. I didn't open the door. I asked through what she wanted, and she started yelling that we needed to talk, that I owed her closure, that I couldn't just throw away for years like they meant nothing. I told her we'd already talked, that there was nothing left to say, and that she needed to leave. She stood there for another 10 minutes, alternating between crying and yelling, before finally getting in her car and driving away. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I changed my locks and installed a security camera. But that wasn't the end of it. She showed up again the following week, this time during the day on Saturday. I was working on the dock, and I looked up to see her walking down the path from the driveway. I stood up, told her she was trespassing and needed to leave. She said she just wanted to talk, that if I'd just give her an hour, she'd leave me alone forever. I said no. She started crying again, begging, and I had to threaten to call the police before she finally left. Then the story started. Mutual friends would mention things they'd heard, things Maya was saying about me, that I'd cheated on her with multiple women, that I'd used her financially, taken advantage of her, and then discarded her when I got what I wanted, that I was cruel and manipulative, a narcissist who destroyed her mental health. None of it was true, but I stayed quiet. I didn't defend myself, didn't tell people the real reason we'd broken up. Part of it was because I didn't want to humiliate her by revealing her financial secrets. But part of it was also because I was tired. I just want to move on. I mentioned the situation to Ryan one night when we were having beers. I told him Maya had been showing up at my house, that she was spreading lies about me, that it was getting uncomfortable. He was sympathetic, but also seemed nervous. He mentioned that Jennifer and Maya were friends, that Maya was actually invited to the wedding. I didn't love that, but I understood. Jennifer had known Maya before she'd known me, and it wasn't fair to ask her to uninvite a friend. A few weeks ago, I told Ryan I'd probably bring Caroline to the wedding. We'd been dating for about 6 weeks at that point, and while it was still relatively new, it felt natural to have her there. It was at my house, after all, and she'd expressed interest in seeing the place. Ryan got quiet, then said he'd have to talk to Jennifer about it. I thought that was weird, but didn't push. Last week, Ryan called me. I could tell immediately that something was wrong from his tone. He was nervous, apologetic, but also firm in a way that put me on edge. He asked if we could talk about the wedding, and I said of course. That's when he dropped it on me. He asked me not to bring a date to the wedding, to my own house, because Maya, who's friends with his fiancée, can't handle seeing me with someone else. I actually laughed at first because I thought he was joking, but he wasn't. He was completely serious. He explained that Jennifer had talked to Maya, that Maya was still really struggling with the breakup, that seeing me with someone else would be too painful for her. He said it would be better for everyone if I came alone, that it was just one day, that I could bring Caroline around some other time. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was my house, my property, and I was being asked to show up alone to accommodate my ex-girlfriend who'd lied to me for 4 years and was now harassing me and spreading lies about me. I told Ryan that was completely ridiculous, that I wasn't going to be alone at a wedding on my own property just because Maya couldn't handle her emotions. Ryan's voice got harder. He said I was being selfish, that this was his wedding day, and I should be willing to make a small sacrifice for him. Small sacrifice. Like my dignity and autonomy were small things. Like my own comfort in my own home was negotiable. I told him that if Maya was that fragile, maybe she shouldn't come to the wedding. He said that wasn't an option, that Jennifer wouldn't uninvite her friend. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. He said that Maya needed closure, that she'd been asking to talk to me for months, and that maybe at the wedding I could sit down with her, give her the conversation she needed, help her move on. He actually suggested that I spend part of his wedding day at my house, giving my ex-girlfriend the closure she thought she deserved. That's when I'd had enough. I'd been protecting Maya's privacy for months, letting her paint me as the villain, staying quiet while she told lies about me to anyone who'd listen. But this had gone too far. I told Ryan the truth, the whole truth I'd been keeping to myself. I explained about the debt, about the 4 years of lies, about why our relationship had really ended. I told him that Maya wasn't some innocent victim who deserved my sympathy. She was someone who deceived me for years and was now trying to manipulate the situation to make herself feel better. And I told him that if Maya was genuinely unstable enough that seeing me with a date would cause her to have a breakdown, then she couldn't come to my property at all. I couldn't trust what she might do. She'd already shown up at my house multiple times, uninvited, already demonstrated that she couldn't respect boundaries. This was my home, my sanctuary, the place I'd poured my heart and money into restoring. I wasn't going to feel unsafe in it. I wasn't going to walk on eggshells in my own house, because my ex-girlfriend couldn't handle reality. Ryan was silent for a long moment. Then he exploded. He called me selfish, cruel, vindictive. He said I was destroying his wedding over nothing, that I was making everything about me when this was supposed to be his day. He said I'd changed, that I wasn't the person he'd grown up with, that the breakup had made me bitter and mean. He told me to go to hell and hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone, trying to process what had just happened. My best friend since childhood had just told me to go to hell because I wouldn't let myself be bullied in my own home. I felt angry and hurt and betrayed, but I also felt something else. Clarity. This wasn't about the wedding anymore. This was about respect, about boundaries, about whether I was going to let other people dictate how I lived in my own space. I made a decision. I called Ryan back, and when he didn't answer, I left a voicemail. I told him the wedding couldn't happen at my house anymore. They need to find another venue. I wasn't going to host an event where I was expected to accommodate someone who'd been harassing me, where my comfort in my own home was considered less important than my ex-girlfriend's feelings. Ryan called me back within 5 minutes, and this time he wasn't angry. He was panicked. He begged me to reconsider, said they couldn't find another venue on such short notice, that everything was already planned and paid for. I told him I was sorry, but my decision was final. He said I was ruining his life, that I'd regret this, that our friendship was over. Then he hung up again. That was a week ago. Since then, I've learned that the wedding is off entirely. They couldn't find another location that was available in April and within their budget. The venues that were available were either booked or wanted prices they couldn't afford. They've postponed indefinitely, which apparently has caused its own set of problems with vendors and guests and family members who'd made travel plans. Ryan's not speaking to me. Jennifer sent me a long, angry text message calling me heartless and selfish, saying I destroyed the most important day of her life because I couldn't handle being uncomfortable for a few hours. She said Maya had offered to not come if it meant they could still use my house, but by then I'd already made my decision and wouldn't reverse it. She said I was punishing them for Maya's actions, which wasn't fair. Mutual friends have been reaching out, taking sides. Some understand my position, agree that I was being asked to do something unreasonable in my own home. Others think I should have just sucked it up for one day, that the friendship was more important than my pride. A few have stopped talking to me altogether, siding firmly with Ryan and Jennifer. My parents are disappointed in me. They love Ryan, have known him since he was a little kid, and they think I'm throwing away a lifelong friendship over something that could have been worked out. My mom said I was being stubborn, that sometimes you have to compromise for the people you love. My dad was quieter about it, but clearly agreed with her. Caroline has been supportive, which is something. When I told her what happened, she said she understood my decision, that no one should have to feel uncomfortable in their own home. She also said she wouldn't have wanted to go to a wedding where she wasn't welcome, where her presence was causing problems. She's been patient with me as I've processed everything, but I can tell this whole situation has affected our relationship. It's hard to be present with someone new when you're grieving the loss of an old friendship. I've spent a lot of time at the lake house over the past week, sitting on the dock, looking out at the water, trying to figure out if I did the right thing. The house feels different now, heavy with the weight of what's happened. The gazebo where Ryan and Jennifer were supposed to get married stands empty. The wisteria just starting to bloom. It's beautiful and sad at the same time. I keep replaying the conversations in my head, wondering if there was something I could have said differently, some way I could have made Ryan understand. But every time I think about it, I come back to the same fundamental problem. I was being asked to compromise my own comfort and safety in my own home to accommodate someone who'd wronged me, who'd been harassing me, who'd been lying about me. And when I said no, I was treated like the villain. They've already told everyone the wedding is postponed, already dealt with the fallout, and I don't think they'd accept my offer now, even if I made it. Too much has been said, too many bridges burned. So I sit here in this house I bought to heal, to move forward, to create new memories, and I wonder if I've made a terrible mistake. The house is beautiful. The work I've done has honored my grandparents' legacy, but it feels lonely now in a way it didn't before. I'd imagined it filled with friends and laughter, with celebrations and joy. Instead, it's become the site of a friendship's ending, a symbol of all the ways life doesn't go according to plan. I know I did the right thing. I know that, but knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are two different things. I feel sad and angry and guilty all at once. I feel like I've lost something precious, something I can never get back. 22 years of friendship ended over a wedding that never happened. But I also feel something else, a strange sense of peace buried under all the other emotions. I stood up for myself. I set a boundary and enforced it, even when it cost me dearly. I didn't let myself be manipulated or guilted into doing something that felt wrong. That has to count for something, doesn't it? The lake is calm today, the water smooth as glass. I can see fish jumping near the dock, and there's a heron standing in the shallows, patient and still. My grandfather used to say that the lake taught you patience, that you couldn't rush water or time. I think about him a lot these days, about what he'd say about this whole situation. I think he'd tell me that doing the right thing isn't always easy, that sometimes it costs you more than you want to pay. But you do it anyway because that's what integrity means. I don't know if Ryan and I will ever repair this. I don't know if he'll ever understand why I made the choice I made. I don't know if Jennifer will ever forgive me, or if our mutual friends will stop taking sides, or if my parents will ever fully support my decision. But I know I can live with myself. I know I didn't compromise who I am to make other people comfortable. And in the end, maybe that's all any of us can do. The house is mine. This sanctuary, this place of memories and healing belongs to me. And no one, not Maya, not Ryan, not anyone, gets to make me feel unsafe or unwelcome here. That's the boundary I drew, and I'd draw it again, even knowing what it cost me. If you enjoyed this story, like and subscribe for more.